Um, we're live. We're back. We're recording. This time, we're here, Evolution of Engagement Season 2. And Joe, we're taking a different approach here. We're not live. It's just an opportunity to have the conversation. Evolution of Engagement is, again, the place for us to discuss experiential brand partnerships, influencer partnerships, what's going on in the industry, and probably throw a few gems here and there for those who are making career moves or even just trying to advance in their career.
Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, this is the launch of season 2 of the evolution of engagement.
Yeah.
I think it's been a pretty profound, journey that we've had so far, especially as experiential has evolved. So you and I kind of doing this and seeing what it's evolved into for a little pun there.
Yeah.
But and certainly going into now this season of it and kind of the unraveling of like
Yeah.
what the events industry is looking like right now. We thought
Yeah.
this would be a great idea to do like more of a recording aspect of things and kind of talk through topics and events and maybe experiences and just kind of overall arching conversation about our industry. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be doing it this way now. So
Yeah, me too. But for those this is their first time hearing this show and even seeing us both or hearing us both, share a little bit of your POV of how we met and go from there. And then I'll give my POV and then let's see where they match up at.
POV of how we met. I
Yeah, how
mean,
we met and how we are at this point today.
yeah, I mean, Marcus, wow, it's I've actually been having a little bit of one of those existential crises that people have in their 30s and whatnot. So
Welcome.
one of them being the fact that it's been 5 years since the pandemic. If
Yeah,
you actually kind of look at it, and literally it's coming up of like 5 years since like the whole world shut down.
yeah,
I remember you and I connecting during that time frame.
yeah,
I remember when you and I were like just straight up just chatting, getting to know one another virtually, and then staying in touch about like what the industry is facing during that time, but then also what's the resurgence going to be when it comes out, which we're obviously here
we're,
in circa
we're here.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
remember you and I meeting that way, and then over the years, shoot, I think it was 2023 at the Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity, we finally met up in person, hung
yeah,
out, went to the LinkedIn pop up on the rooftop,
yeah,
got to go and just chill and explore. And then we met up again when I wanted to come see your activation at the McDonald's at Art Basel in 2023. And so
yeah.
I know we've only really actually like met in person twice, but shoot, I know we've known each other for a long time. So that's my POV.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think mine's going to be any different. So for those who are just tuning in for the first thing you missed first season 1, go back and listen because we're going to be releasing season 1 as well. But yeah, season 2. For those who don't know, Joe and I,
Yeah,
we're both
Marcus, I want them to know who Marcus Gilmore is, and then
yeah. They'll find out later.
all
But
right.
I'll say this: it's 2 industry vets. Our show will also include some guests. So throughout the year, you'll hear from throughout the season, you'll hear from some guests who are also industry vets that've been in the trenches, who've worked their way up through on the brand side or the agency side, and so. That's what the show is about, and I'm glad to do it with you, Joe, and we can kind of move on and make sure people are staying tuned in.
Yeah.
So as we get ready for season 2, and this is the first episode, it's just you and I. It's just basically us pressing record on our conversations we have all the time. But I have 2 questions for you. And there's a lot of terms that we use in general in the industry. Can you break down from using your knowledge of what is a brand versus an agency? When we say that, like, what does that mean and why? Yeah, like, what does that mean? We'll break and go into like why does that matter for our industry, but brand and an agency, what's kind of the difference between those 2?
Well, I mean, the brand is obviously the organization that is the one that's out there um, selling a product and or service,
Yep.
and essentially is one that we see B2B, B2C, doesn't matter what you are, it's what you and I are engaging with every single day. So that
Yep.
is the brand, and it's kind of an interesting dichotomy when you split up the two because they're both entities that are out there for mainly for profit.
Yeah.
And a brand though is the one that is all marketing, all advertising, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then when you look at what an agency does, and I am an agency person through and through. I've been
Yep.
that since I was younger and got into the workforce. And I've always noticed how an agency at its genesis, an agency is there to bring the brand out in the most creative and the most authentic way to connect to their targeted audience, right? I
Yep.
mean, if you look back at the Mad Men days, like when advertising started, ad agencies, all that stuff. I mean, what was it there for? They were there to challenge the brand, challenge the mindset of how can I creatively get in touch. And there was like a psychoanalysis of it. There was a sociology like an aspect of it. There was all different aspects of like how can you market to your targeted audience? How can you advertise in a really creative way? And how can you
Yep.
deliver through omni-channel aspects of marketing, right? So whether
Yes.
that's now social media, that's obviously on the forefront of our generation and the ones after us, all the way to media, television, anything. And then when it stems to what you and I do, experiential, I mean, it's been around a long time. I mean, people
Yep.
kind of forget at experiential was engagement marketing, promotional marketing, guerrilla marketing.
Yep.
You're sampling at a store, or the Red Bull vehicles that are still out there handing out the Red Bulls and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's always been there, and seeing what experiential has become
Hmm.
through through the lens of an agency, that it's their job to push the envelope for the brand to go there with their product and service, and just be disrupting is
Yeah.
essentially how I look at it. So
I mean, you laid it out perfectly for those because we use those terms a lot on this show and brand versus agency. And I kind of just wanted to hear from your perspective, and I think you hit it right on the head. And just food for thought as we think about the this year, I would love to get the team that put together the Red Bull the cars. Like who led that? Who was in that meeting and said, you know what, we're gonna pick up tiny cars, put them, put the little can on the back. We're going to go to every single college. Like they were everywhere early 2010, 2009. Like you couldn't go to any event without seeing the Red Bull cars there. So mad respect to whoever launched that campaign and launched that kind of guerrilla marketing style, because it really is the patent version of experiential, one of the kind of ways of guerrilla marketing.
yeah, look
But
look at the what is it, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, right? I
yeah,
mean,
that's another
I
one.
I started as a tour manager. That was
Yeah,
my introduction to experiential, and
yeah,
that was the mascot, if you will, not just for Oscar Mayer, but that was the mascot for being a tour manager.
yeah.
Was if you were a tour manager for that vehicle, it was like kind of interesting. You're like, oh my god, you're that one, and it's exactly what you think when it comes to experiential and events is what has worked, and I've said this before. I know you and I have definitely said this before. One of the best things that's worked is just creating a very simplistic idea of something
Simple as
and
bad.
and execution. I mean, yes, we love the grandiose things and some of them that are mesmerizing and like there's just intricacy all throughout. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just the easiest, the ones that are like multi-sensory but basic in its execution. Those are the ones that work.
Yeah, those are the ones that always cut through the noise when it's
Mhm.
simple and it's clean and everyone can just get the why
Yep.
behind it. So that being said, and I think about Red Bull, which brings me to a perfect segue into kind of what's coming up. But before we get to what's coming up, we definitely can touch on the things that just happened recently, especially in our industry. Super Bowl went down. I went out to Super Bowl this year. Very. This was my first time this is my second time going to Super Bowl in my career. For those who are thinking about career big moments, like if you work on the agency side or brand side, you probably get to, depending on your client, you may get to go to Super Bowl one time, right?
Mm.
There's only a handful of brands and agencies that go to Super Bowl every year. And the only way truly your brand is going to Super Bowl is if they're a big time sponsor, or you work on the athlete side, or you try to be disruptive.
Right.
My first time going to Super Bowl was through Verizon. Verizon's the main communication sponsor they are the communication sponsor for the NFL in general. So of course they're there. But this year, it was through Adidas. Adidas has about 14, 15 players in the NFL, maybe a little bit more than that. And then in Super Bowl, they had three, of course, being one Patrick Mahomes on out there. And then I think they had like three other players. So what's interesting is that my work this year was really centered around influencers and creator marketing, working with a set group of influencers to come to the space that we built. And well, we didn't build, but we had another agency that built, and create content with all the NFL players that were coming through there signed by Adidas. Very different way and approach to what I'm used to, right? I'm used to building a setup, being very consumer focused. And this was more of like an internal, they call it what they call is like a brand hub. It's a place where they can connect with the athletes, bring them out, talk with, have the big meetings, create content, do all those things. So it's really interesting to be in that space and still flourish and come from more of an influencer marketing standpoint. And then the following week, I ended up going to NBA All-Star, doing the same thing, just with more creators. It was 10.
Well, I gotta ask you, what would you say was one of the standout activations at Super Bowl or All Star, if you're able to kind of like disclose what you saw or got to experience?
Yeah.
Is there a particular presence or activation that stood out?
Yeah, from Super Bowl, I think that Crown Royal did a really good job this year, just being a place where they could sample. They had quick photo ops, and they were very prominent. Their colors stand out really, or pretty loud there, so they stand out. At NBA All Star, I think DoorDash and 2K did really well. DoorDash really took ownership of from all levels, from content to events to as well as having a place for people to pop into. Because they are one of the sponsors for the NBA, it was interesting to see how they could. I'm going to put my fake mic down. That, where they can really showcase that they are, one of the main. They are a sponsor, and they're a partner versus like just putting dollars, like they really
Yeah.
did. Case.
I mean, I just to kind of go to the Super Bowl one. I mean, so Crown Royal being Diageo, they if I'm not mistaken, they transformed Bourbon Street into Rum Street as well. If that had occurred, if you saw that at all or not, but I swear I saw some advertising on that as well, and I'd be intrigued to know what like kind of the Crown Royal experience was like.
Yeah. So the one I saw was more of it was a booth setup where you would go in, you got to sample like different. Now I've seen something similar at NASCAR that they run, but they're basically introducing new Crown Royal products, and specifically like some of the blends. I'm calling them blends, but I don't know if that's the proper term, but where they have new recipes with Crown and they're bringing them together. So the audience recognizes Crown Royal, but then they are also trying like, what was the drink called? It was like a peach something. Like they already have Crown Royal peach, but now it was like more of a mix just to get consumers to try Crown Royal, but from like a fast drink perspective. You know how they have the canned version of things? That's
Yeah.
basically what it was versus the liquor bottles.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, like you have to understand that the audience at Super Bowl are not truly looking for crazy experiences.
Mhm.
Foot Locker did really well as they had like a Foot Locker experience where I didn't make it inside, but I got to see just the outside of it. It looked pretty cool there. But Foot Locker and 2K, from a NBA perspective, they also just knew how to catch the audience's eye.
Right.
The Super Bowl's audience is different. Like they're just there to see players, right? It's a little different. They're like, I want autographs. Where NBA is more of they venture out, they want to try things, they are intrigued by the throwback jerseys or AR things. Like I don't know if NFL audiences, and I could be wrong, um, they always gravitate towards that. So you see the brands kind of keep it very straightforward with the type of activations they do.
Yeah.
Still, some are cutting edge, but some are just like we know what we're getting right off.
There's definitely. I mean, I can see that. You know,
Yeah,
I got to check out the you know, the articles from our industry, like associations and publications like BizBash and Event Marketer. They came up with their kind of their recaps of like activations that were happening around Super Bowl. And there's a lot, you know, there's a lot going on around this time of the year too. I mean,
mhm,
certainly, you know, that one of the bigger ones that are popping up literally, you know, next week it starts is South by Southwest, and that's um, I thought at first there was going to be kind of a different lens or a different optic toward it, you know, just because things are changing in our industry.
yep,
Lot more private equity firms are investing into agencies and brands and these big events and stuff like that. So that's changing the landscape of things.
yep,
Um, but South by is shaping up to be pretty big. I mean, from my research and just talking to people around the industry. So.
yeah, yeah. So you are heading to South by this year. How you feel about it?
I feel great. I will be there from pretty much almost all of March because I kind of looking at Austin as a personal thing of potentially going there for long term, but
Yeah.
also going to be there, you know, for the whole festival. I've actually never been for the whole entire festival. I've always been there from just like the first weekend and maybe a couple days after, but to be there for the full film, television, interactive comedy, and then music part of it, I'm really intrigued to see how brands are showing up. Like, for instance, the first weekend, there's always brands that go all out, like Netflix, Paramount, you know, all these brands show up and do their activations and their house takeovers and their parties and events. But the second weekend, sometimes brands are they're not doing an activation anymore, or a different one comes in, and one of them being JBL, and they're having like a sound bodega pop
Mhm.
up that they're doing, but it's on like the second weekend. So I'm really intrigued to be there that whole time and kind of explore what's going on.
Yeah, I've always wanted to try and visit the other South by Southwest events. Only done the music side of it, so I definitely would be interested to.
You've only ever gone on the second weekend, not the
Yeah,
first weekend.
no, I've never been on the first weekend where it's
Wow. All right. Well, Marcus, that's where you should. I mean, that's where it's crazy. Like
yeah,
pretty much from the 7th to the 12th, um, people are just running all over Austin right now. Austin's going through its huge transition of being one of the most expensive cities in the U.S. It's dropped down a little bit now, but the amount of people that are visiting, the amount of construction that's going on, the infrastructure of the city, it's changing rapidly, but
yeah,
for good reason. I mean, look at how South by Southwest has grown, and now they're at two different cities. You know, they got London coming up in June, and then they have the one out in Sydney, Australia as well.
yeah, yeah. That's the growth, right? Like I look at not only a South by Southwest, but Rolling Loud has
Yeah.
also these the ability to build a platform and then evolve it to be global is really cool and really interesting, and it's amazing that brands and platforms are able to do that. Yeah.
So, do you have an idea of where you'll be going to next? Because I know that the years it one thing I'm noticing with experiential just had this, and I know I'm asking a question, but now I'm also going off on a tangent. Is
Yeah.
one of the things I have noticed, and I posed this question about where they think experiential is going in 2025, and I had someone answer recently that it looks like the events industry, with the way that budgets are being tightened and brands are kind of being more selective as to where to show up, that it makes more sense for them not to go to every single tent pole event, but
Yep.
maybe pick one or two and then go all out, you know, at that particular one.
Yep.
Um, And that's just kind of the vision that some people have shared with me. So I'm interested to see where you'll be going next.
Yeah, I had a few places that I'm thinking about. I thought about the experiential marketing summit that's going to be in April. That'll be out in Vegas. Just trying to, Vegas ain't cheap, so really need that good sponsorship from somebody to take us out there.
Definitely ain't cheap.
But also thinking about, I kind of want to double down, and this is kind of insight into my brain, but I want to double down into more of the streaming space. So like going to a Twitch, I don't know if when TwitchCon is going to take place, but TwitchCon,
Yeah, usually later in the year it is.
yeah. So that's something that it's in May actually. So
Oh,
like
wow. Oh, wow.
TwitchCon will take place in San Diego.
In May? Oh, I thought it
No,
was
no, no. It's October. It's October.
okay. Yeah.
There's one in Rotterdam. What's Rotterdam?
That's Rotterdam, Amsterdam? Or Rotterdam, Netherlands, I'm sorry.
Netherlands. Like I would love to go to TwitchCon in October. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. Like being around streamers for work, I'm like, I got to learn this. Like I don't need to be able to stream. I just want to be able to how can I make that part of my world, and understand what's going on so I can
Well, one thing I want to try out that I'm hoping you and I can do for our next episode, or just have different kind of things that we'd like to share for more people that are going to tune in and are just intrigued to see where we are with the evolution of engagement, is more so sharing videos of us actually at the activations. So using our cell phone and just recording us at an activation, immersing through it and all. I highly recommend we start doing that too. I think that would be a really cool aspect of like what activations are like, and people kind of getting a sense of what the immersive touch points are and stuff.
Yeah, I think like I wonder if there's a way we can start clipping it into our experience. I think that'd be pretty fire if people got to see us talk about these moments and then bring them along for the ride.
Marcus, can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So Joe, we are coming to the end of the episode 1 of season 2, and I had a question for you. This is something, it's the start of the year, and as you continue to grow in your career, what is maybe something you would tell what was something you would tell yourself year 1 into the industry? And I didn't want to put an age on it, so I'm just going to say year 1 into the industry. What would you tell yourself then to help be prepared for this moment?
If I had the opportunity to talk to my younger self with the knowledge that I have now,
with the knowledge you got now, what would you tell?
Right. It's like an interview question, so thank you, Marcus. But thanks for putting me on the spot for that one. But I suppose I'm gonna keep the attributes that a mentor of mine told me many years ago.
Yeah.
And it was patience and adaptability. Those are two that I was told a long time ago, like back in like 2015. And even then I was still extremely novice, but a couple of years in, and it was patience and adaptability, because you have to be. I mean, in this events industry, in this experiential, I know I'm answering like probably like 3 different questions here, but one of them being the fact that everyone is saying experiences, and it's kind of losing its touch, almost its impact. And I just want to like be very, very straightforward that when I say the events and the experiential industry, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But you really got to take a step back and realize like we are creating fun moments for people. Yeah. And we sometimes get lost in the weeds of whether you're in the creative department, whether you're in the production operations department, whether you're doing fabrication, whether you're doing strategy, whether you're the brand, we get lost in some of it sometimes. And just having that patience is huge. That was always something, because something was always going to go wrong. So you have to be patient. Sometimes things just take time, and that's, again, you have to be patient. And then that segues into the other attribute, and that's adaptability, which is something
Yeah.
that you can just have in life in general. And that's why I like what we do for a living. And that's why I tell anyone who's going into the industry, who's been in it, honestly, this question can go toward the people who are going in year one, or the people who've been doing it for 30 plus years, and they need to be reminded that, like, sometimes it's just, you got to be okay with adaptability.
Yeah, you have to adapt, and that mind it's a mindset
It
that you
is.
have to be in for to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think your younger self would appreciate that information.
I, I think my current self needs to appreciate that too.
That's real. That's real. Yeah.
Marcus, I have one as we wind down this, because we tend to talk about the events that are happening, maybe any brand partnerships. You're very plugged into kind of knowing what's happening out there in the world. But I'm going to ask you a little bit more of like a deeper question, and that is, what does experiential mean to you?
Mhm.
And further, the second part of that question is, how do you feel we are evolving as an industry?
Yeah.
I knew it.
I think we are evolving with experiential by being open to trying newer things that that every audience is used to using or doing. And for example,
Hmm.
I mentioned earlier, like I want to learn more about streaming and tapping in there. And from an experiential event standpoint, a brand 3 years ago would never touch streaming. They'd be like, no, it's too, it'll drive them crazy for the day. Now a brand is like, I'll do streaming for an hour or 40 minutes. And that's the evolution of engagement, right? Like they will still have their event space, but now we're going to implement streaming into that. But 3 years ago, would never. It would be so nerve-wracking for them to do that. But now they're open to it. So I think it's trying as things evolve and people adapt to doing certain things, the brands are like, let's add that in. Like, how
Yeah.
can we have an event day and we don't stream or we don't go live? Like, we need to figure out a way to make sure we implement that in there. Um, and then experiential to me is you're kind of born into it, or you just it's a part of your lifestyle very early on. And mine started with just throwing parties in college, and that turned into like, wait, let me go study what's really going on here, how to create like a unique consumer experience and understand people and
Yeah.
behaviors and study those things so I can be sharper in the business and not just go off instinct. I trust my gut, but it's a science to it all. And if you really, really tap in, you can master that science. So,
Always that
um,
balance for sure.
yeah, so I that's how I feel about experiential, and truly that's how I think that it will continue to evolve. It's just the industry will adapt to consumers' growth in trying new things.
The change in consumers' behavior, in and if a brand is smart and responsive enough to say, this is how I need to adapt, then the agency will also help amplify that and
It
create
will.
an opportunity. So that
Yeah,
goes hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier, of the difference between a brand and an agency. So
yeah, because on the agency side, I guarantee you, and I know it because I work at one, the creative team, or like we call it like I'm calling it like a innovation team. We have a different term for it internally, but like they got ideas where it's like they just want to and it's so far out there, it's so maybe 6 months ahead. They sit on it and wait, but they know that like if we throw this to a brand, they may bite on it and it may take them to
yeah,
to the moon. And that I think that like it's being able to have a brand and have certain people in positions where they're like, yeah, let's try that. Like,
yeah,
let me see, show me what it means and how this can be implemented into our experience. But I think that the more brands evolve and they understand that the consumer behaviors are evolving, then that makes it,
100%.
yeah, it makes it adaptable for everyone.
Well, Marcus, I appreciate that answer, and I'm very happy to say that this is season 2, episode 1 of the evolution of engagement. I'm
Yeah.
happy to say that we are showcasing our own evolution of this series. We're going to have way more guests throughout the year. We're going to have a lot more kind of touch points on activations itself, like potentially recordings of us going through an activation or a pop-up or an event or something that we're attending, and then just overarching conversation like this. And I think
Yep.
it's great because we appreciate everyone who tunes in, who interacts, who looks forward to these, and just kind of keep that momentum going.
That is 100% true. Well, Joe, episode 1 down. Let's get it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Right.
Not bad.